How's it going, everyone? This is now the 6th episode. I only have 5 fingers, so just add 1 on the side right here. 6th episode of the 9.5, and well, a lot has happened since the last video where I replaced the valve cover gasket on this car. So when I replaced that valve cover gasket, it was my first time doing it, and I did not know or see that these little, they're called like half moons or something, both of them actually got pinched between the valve cover gasket, or the valve cover, and the cylinder head. So the car ended up leaking out of here, and I'll explain this huge mess and why there's so much missing here in a second, because from the title you can probably tell we'll be replacing this motor mount, which has seen better days. But that's not why this is apart. I'll get to that here in a minute. But pretty much these got pinched. It leaked oil onto the serpentine belt. The serpentine belt ended up slipping off because of that. So I ended up replacing the serpentine belt, ran it for about 50 miles, just got the car through emissions and registered. That's another thing I'll talk about in this video, but the car just got registered, so that's a great sign. But put a new serpentine belt on it, and then this happened to that new serpentine belt. I'll put a little video clip over the screen right here. About 80% of the belt was wrapped around the AC compressor right there, but the pulley around the outside spins, and the clutch on the inside also still spins. So I don't know what's up with that. I think what the problem is, and none of these other pulleys have any sort of play to them. The tensioner here, which I also just removed, and I didn't film any of this because I was just kind of messing around with the car, does just have a tiny bit of play in it. So I'm hoping that's what caused it to slip off. None of these pulleys have sharp edges on them really, that I think might have torn the belt apart. So I'm not really sure what happened here, but today we're going to be replacing the tensioner, the serpentine belt, and this motor mount. But obviously I got a new valve cover gasket, so brand new valve cover gasket, so that's all good. Now I have a whole list of parts that I've replaced, so I'm going to talk about that in this video as well. So this past weekend, you guys might remember I mentioned it, the car smoked really bad because it would leak oil and drip onto the exhaust right there, and then it would pretty much smoke as soon as the car got hot. That was the oil pressure sensor, so we replaced that, and it does not smoke, well, it barely smokes anymore, just very, very slightly, and I think that's because it's still burning off some of that old oil. We also replaced the cabin air filter. That wasn't in terrible shape, but it didn't look too great. A couple other small things that I have replaced, like on the inside, just some little minor details. These little covers that go behind the door panel, the little bolt covers right in there, both of those were missing. So my buddy Eric thankfully had a Parts 9.5, and he had 2 good ones on there because they're no longer available new for some reason. So I got 2 new covers for that. The e-brake handle was also the leather was just like completely ripped off of it. So I got a new e-brake handle from a junkyard, replaced that, so that's looking a lot better. I also picked up a new DIC, put that in. That got rid of the 3 check engine lights that I had, the P1312, the P1334, and the P0340. But after that, I drove the car around for a bit, and I went to get it through emissions. It passed emissions. Then I went to get it registered yesterday. So I've put about like at least 50, 60 miles on it since all of those repairs. And then, like I said, the serpentine belt just decided to completely shred itself. Another thing I want to mention is the transmission was not it was shifting kind of rough, and it was acting up a bit. There was nothing on the dipstick, even when the car was hot. So we ended up putting 3.5 quarts of trans fluid, 3.5, when the car was hot, when the transmission had been run through, just to get it up to like a little bit above the minimum level. So I plan on doing a trans fluid flush on this car anyways, but 3.5 quarts. So I think it is leaking slowly out of these washers, these lines that go into the trans fluid right here. I'll get a light on it so you guys can see a little bit better. But if you look into that line, or if you look on that line right there, you'll see there's a bunch of fluid just kind of around it. There's another one down at the bottom down there. It's not going to be really easy to get onto camera. Might also be leaking, but I'm hoping that this one, now that it's tightened down, is not going to leak anymore. The last thing that's getting done tomorrow, which will still be within the scope of when this video is being filmed, are new tires. Like I said when I got the car, it came with some pretty bald new tires. Or not new tires, snow tires. So I have some brand new Michelins that I'll be throwing on here, so you guys will also see that in this video. But yeah, that's pretty much all that's been going on. What I have taken off here so far, this air intake pipe right here, this bracket for the motor mount, that is just 4 16mm bolts right here, and then 1 18mm for the nut that goes onto this stud. And then there's a 10mm that holds this bracket for the power steering line. So that's all that I've removed. Actually, I take that back. Then, of course, I removed this idler pulley, which this pulley seems completely fine. There was zero play in this thing when it was on the car. I was really messing with it. But this was just a 15mm, so I removed that. And then, of course, I removed the tensioner itself. This was just an 8mm Allen key, so that was a bit of a pain to remove because the bolt's pretty long and it was a little bit hard to break loose, but it's off nonetheless. So that part's getting replaced. This thing's getting replaced when it eventually decides to come in the mail, and we're getting a new belt on in this video. And then of course the new tires as well, which I'm probably, or which I should say I'm most excited about. But guys, on top of everything that's already been done, this car still needs way more work. And I cleaned my hands very well after taking all this stuff off and even showered, and they're already that dirty again just from like showing you what I've done to the car since then. So it needs a lot of work. I still have a huge list of parts, both cosmetic and mechanical, and a huge box in the trunk as well. I'll put a picture on the screen right here of what this parts pile looked like before I started doing everything that I just mentioned in this video, and that list is just growing as more things are going wrong. So yeah, I guess with that being said, I should also mention I have the motor jacked up. I have a wood block on there and just a little bit of weight on the oil pan, so there's not too much stress being put on these other motor mounts. Another thing this car is going to need are some rear brakes. Rear brakes are very bad. The front ones aren't much better really, but there's at least some pad left on the fronts, whereas the rears are pretty much gone. Next thing you will see are these exact curbed, disgusting wheels with some brand new tread and tires on them.
Tomorrow.
New tires are on the car. We've got the Michelin Pilot Sport AS3 Pluses. These are some pretty good tires, fairly aggressive tread. They're not going to last for 60,000 miles by any means, but these will be great tires. I'm super happy with these, super happy to have them on the car. My dad actually has these exact same tires on his 9.5 Aero, so that's kind of a bit of a coincidence. But now I suppose we can go ahead, throw these back on the car, except for the front passenger one, of course, because we'll need to keep that off for the belt. I did pick up a new belt today, and then we'll be getting a tensioner later today as well. That's the old one right there. So yeah, hopefully we'll be coming together very soon. I do have my new Serpentine belt. This is a Continental 6PK 2415. Thankfully you should be able to get this from your local auto parts store, although it is cheaper to get it on eSob parts. And it comes with a 3-year warranty, which is nice. And here we have our new tensioner and pulley. Now this is called a grenade pin right here. You do not want to pull this out until you have it on the car, because you thread your 8mm hex head bolt through here, and if you pull this out beforehand, it's not going to line up. So we're going to pretty much slap this on the car like this, tighten that bolt down, and then we'll go ahead and pull this out. And I almost probably pulled on it a little bit harder than I should have right there, because that would have been bad. Anyways, let's get to work. I am not at all looking forward to tightening this down, given how much of a pain it was to loosen. Also, this vacuum line broke, so that's cool. Not really surprised though. Okay guys, so I want to apologize for not filming that, because literally all I've done is tighten that 8mm hex screw in. And then I started messing with the tensioner, trying to get this grenade pin out. You can see it right there. And there was no way. I tried like sticking something in the back end of it to try and push it out. Just trying to pull it out with some vice grips. None of that would work. So what I ended up doing is just sticking the 1/2" extension in here, pushing on it to basically release the tension. And now it pretty much just broke that. So I should be able to hopefully slide it out the back. There we have it. It's basically bent like a little Allen key now, but it worked. So we can go ahead and toss that out. And now our tensioner is working. This is the other end of that vacuum line that's broken right here. So you can see tape job, but I guess I'll need to be ordering a new one of those. With the tensioner on and fully tightened, we can go ahead and put one of our idler pulleys back on. Just the 15mm, the hole for it is right there. Got to start somewhere with this, shove it all in there. I've got the diagram pulled up, so I have the belt all around everything except for the power steering up here, and I'll show you why in a second. If you have the short belt, which I recommend, the short belt's supposed to be more reliable. It just passes straight over this idler pulley and straight on the power steering, as opposed to going around this second idler pulley down here. So that's the setup I have, is the short belt. But now what we're going to do is we have our tensioner right here. We have our long 1/2". Pretty much I'm going to pull this towards me. I have the belt handy right here. As I pull this, it's going to release tension on the belt, and I should be able to slip the belt over the power steering right here. Belt is all fully on. Now we're going to reinstall this intake hose right here. Now time to fix that vacuum line real quick, and then we can start it up. So right before I went to start this, my dad came out because he wanted to look at it with me and see what I had done. I don't know, just because he's a nice person. And he noticed that with this idler pulley, the one that I had already removed, it's a common failure point on these. It's going to be hard to tell on camera, but the edges of this right here are worn down a lot. So he thankfully had a spare that is pretty much brand new. You can see the edges on this are much, I guess, sharper, or they're higher up, I should say. I'm going to go ahead and swap this new one in. Maybe it slipped off of here and that's what caused it to go bad. That's what we're going to hope. Thankfully it's an easy swap, so I just slipped the belt right back off of here, and we're going to reinstall this real quick. So because I'm not getting a motor mount for another 3 days, I put the car back together, and we will retake it apart when I get the part, and I'll catch up with you guys then.
2,000 years later.
We finally have our new motor mount in. So that's going to be the last thing that we're doing in this video. But before I start replacing this and tearing the motor apart, or I guess taking that bracket off, because it's really all we need to do, I want to show you guys just how bad this motor mount is. You guys will see it more once I actually get it off. But just watch how much the engine shifts when I go from park, reverse, neutral drive, how much it torques forward and backwards, because this mount is just, it's so bad. Three bolts holding the mount in. They're 13mm. Pretty clearly here you can see the difference between the new one and the old one. The new one, I can move this around. Obviously it's supposed to move around a bit, but it takes a good amount of force and resistance. This one, first off, this is elevated, probably about an inch off of this rim right here. This one just rests right on there, and it just flops around. The inside of it is all just beat up and gross. So yeah, let's go ahead and throw the new one in now, because this thing is just so bad. So just went through as I was editing this video, and the files that I had putting the rest of the motor mount on just got corrupted. So new motor mount is on, so that's fantastic. Sorry I don't have any footage of it though. Let me know if you guys like these kind of videos where I'm just doing a bunch of small repairs like this, because I probably have another one planned the next episode. I'll be doing oil change, coolant flush, maybe the trans fluid too, and just like a few other small little parts that I have for this car that I want to put on. Let me know if you like seeing those types of videos. But yeah, this thing is slowly starting to come together. So thank you all so much for watching. If you're enjoying the 9.5 content, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Check out my Patreon if you haven't already, because I am dumping a lot of money into this car and it's starting to get a little bit scary. But thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.